We are the generation of women that is writing this playbook for the second half of our lives. Women are living to be 100. So 50 is really the halfway mark. It's not the beginning of the end. It's the beginning of the beginning.
Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita, and the founder of Power Purpose Play, a global community of women in midlife. I'm here to tell you that it's your time now to rediscover what has always been inside of you and bring that out into the world. If you're wondering what's next, but don't know quite what that is, or if you feel a twinge in your heart telling you that you have so much more to do and so much more to offer, you're in the right place. Ask yourself, if not now, when? Do you want to leave your job, start your own business, take control of your health, reignite the passion in your marriage, write that book, or at least that first chapter? Transitions like this can be daunting, but through listening to my story and interviews with incredible women every week, I hope to inspire you to take action. I rediscovered myself after the age of 50, and I know you can too. It's my time now to help you do just that. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I can't believe we're into February already, and I certainly hope that your year has been going off to a great start. I'm really excited to share some changes and focus for myself in this podcast as well as my brand in the next few weeks. So stay tuned for that as I will share it in the next episode. As we grow and evolve as people and in our work and businesses, we develop more clarity on exactly how we want to serve and whom. And I am developing that clarity more and more. I love the clients I work with, and I wake up every day with this mission. That is, I am committed to transforming the lives of each and every one of my clients by guiding them to realize their true purpose and potential. That is what gets me up every day, and that is what I want for you, to get up every day with excitement for who you are and what you are doing. Often when we transition in our careers or lives, it can be scary, and those fears stop us in our tracks. But it doesn't have to be that way. Instead, we can look at those fears as things that can actually fuel us forward. I spoke recently about our gremlins. Do you know what gremlins are? You may be picturing a monster of some sort, right? Well, you're not too far off. Gremlins, in the context I'm referring to, are those inner voices that tell you in one way or another, I'm not good enough, so don't even bother trying. Have you heard those voices before? These are the voices that keep us from taking chances and living our fullest lives, and they keep us safe, playing safe, small, and stuck. I will share with you as we move forward the gremlins that have shown up in my life and how I have slowly learned to lessen their impact in my life. I learned that despite the gremlins that still appear, this is the stage in my life where I get to shine my greatest gifts and where I get to be unapologetically me. I have created a simple guide for you, which you can download, and it's in the show notes, which you can use to begin to bust your gremlins. You can download it, and if you need further guidance, please schedule a call with me. I'd really love to hear what your gremlins are saying to you and how you can turn their volume down in your head. Today's podcast guest is a perfect example of how we can face our fears and thrive and write our own playbook in life, and how we can, and should be unapologetically ourselves. Enjoy this next episode with Nancy A Shenker. And Nancy, I hear happy birthday is in order. Happy birthday, my friend, and please join me in wishing Nancy a most wonderful birthday, and I hope you enjoy this episode. I'll see you at the end with the key takeaways. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I hope your new year is off to a wonderful beginning,
New beginnings for all, and I hope you are as excited as I am about it. So in case you are new to this third season of our podcast, welcome, and I am grateful for you for being here. I'm your host, Kavita Ahuja, and I'm a women's career and life transitions coach. I'm also a course creator, a writer, a speaker, and your host for this podcast. My mission is to empower women like you to believe and say with confidence, it's my time now, and to help you rediscover who you really are, what you really want, and how to get there. As part of this mission, I interview incredible women for this podcast who share their stories of reinvention and who will inspire you to face the obstacles in your way to reach your vision for yourself in your next stage of life. This week is absolutely no exception, and then I'm honored to have on the show today Nancy A Shenker. Nancy is a marketing innovator, a brand builder, writer, speaker, and self-proclaimed rule breaker. She is over 60 and likes to say, I have dual citizenship in the analog and digital worlds. A brand growth consultant and content strategist and writer, she established her own business called The On Switch in 2003 when she was close to 50. She is a champion of cross-generational collaboration and regularly moderates interactive panels bringing together professionals from their 20s to 80s in various industries. Nancy also has published a column called The Silver Hair Playbook, How to Be a Badass After 50, as well as a guide to dating over 50. She also recently launched a stand-up act called I'm Not Your Effing Grandma about perceptions of older women. Over her 40-year business and marketing career, Nancy has been a C-level executive, an entrepreneur, and a mentor to hundreds of small businesses and professionals at all stages. And if that isn't enough, she has written 8 books, an AI machine learning robotics site, a travel and lifestyle site, and authors a newsletter called Route 66 about energetic aging. Wow, that is so great. I'm so pleased to have you on the show today, Nancy. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. I mean, I just read your incredible bio, and there's so many interesting and kind of non-conventional things, I guess, that you've done in your life. And I just love that. And you've also been at the edge of technology, but also being a stand-up comedian and kind of everything in between. So, and then you also have mentioned that you're kind of in your 6th professional and personal reinvention. So I'd love for you to tell our audience about all your reinventions and what is the driving force behind it and what keeps you moving in this direction.
Well, I'll try to do that fairly succinctly because 67 years, I'll 67
Yes.
next month. So that is a
happy
long
early
time.
birthday.
Thank you. I try to break it down into decades. I was a very shy, chubby, humble little girl. I would say I was pretty fearful as I remember myself, but I was an observer and I always loved telling stories, reading stories. So when I do some of my coaching for women in their professional lives, small business owners and other women, I always try to get them to wrap their heads around what is their innate superpower that they may have had since childhood. And for me, that has always been storytelling. So that was my first 10 years. I'll lump a bunch of years together. I floundered for a little bit trying to figure out what I wanted to do professionally. I was very creative, but it was the 80s and there was a tremendous amount of pressure on women to be professionals. Mm-hmm. So I thought I was going to go to law school. And instead, I went to publishing grad school at night while I was working full time in New York. And then I got tired of being poor and I kind of accidentally fell into financial services. I think it was probably about 12 or 13 interviews because I was changing industries and ended up at Citibank, where much to my amazement, because I'd never taken an economics or business class, I rose very quickly up the corporate ladder. And then I left Citibank, I went to MasterCard and spent a big chunk of my adult life in financial services, in fairly senior executive jobs, doing really heady, wonderful, lucrative things. And along the way, I had 2 daughters and big house in the suburbs, great car, yada, yada, like everything that we were supposed to want in the 80s.
Yes. Yes.
And I was not feeling fulfilled. So I left financial services and I finally made it to the C-suite again, which was the holy grail of corporate life, and was that head of marketing for an international company, conference company that now produces Comic-Con, and got to fly internationally, and big job, big office, big responsibility. And I was just exhausted from corporate bureaucracy, raising 2 kids, getting them ready for college while working full time and commuting. And I'm not really counting my reboots here. I'm probably up to at least 6. And when my position was eliminated at this last corporate job, I remember interviewing for a job at a big money center bank, and I was sitting in the chair listening to the recruiter talk. And it was like that Charlie Brown cartoon where all I heard was wah, 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 wah. And I said, I don't have it in me to do this again, and used some of my severance to launch my own consulting practice. And that was when I was 48, and it was very successful. At the beginning, I almost got to the holy grail number, $1 million in gross revenue, which only 4% of women business owners ever make it to that point.
Nice.
But with a big business, when it's your own business, come a lot of big headaches and responsibilities. And when the recession hit in 2008, 2009, everything unraveled. I was also going through a divorce at the time, and I had to do a lot of soul searching again, because it was that same sort of, I hate to use the word compulsion because it was more rational than that. But I realized I didn't have to have a big company to fulfill my big dreams. So I downsized the company. I sort of blew it up and started all over again. This was in 2010, 2011. And since then, I've been still doing a fair amount of brand consulting, working with a wide range of businesses, but also doing a lot more writing, as evidenced by the 8 books, and blogging, professional speaking. I am now flexing my video muscle and doing a little bit more. I just ordered myself a new tripod and ring light for a belated holiday gift. And yeah, I am moving in that direction. And the stand-up comedy really was an offshoot of the fact that I had already gone into the professional speaking world, had gotten over my fear of standing on stage and speaking to an audience. And I've always been told that I had a snarky sense of humor. And because I feel so passionately about the way older women are currently being mistreated by the media and by employers, I said, I'm going to surface what I call the final ism, but I'm not going to do it by being an old crone, critical, ranting, raving schoolmarm. I'm going to use my sense of humor and my command of statistics to educate people about what's really going on in the world today, in the advertising world, in the business world. And I'm just beginning to chip away at the biases that exist. And as you know, as a professional coach, many of those biases live in our own minds. If we believe that we're washed up, then we will start to behave that way. So I think women just need, and men, but women we're the masters of reinvention. We need to take back some of that power. And you know, as I say, when you see something, say something.
Yeah.
Because our silence is complicity in many respects.
Wow. Okay. I'm just kind of analyzing what you said. It's a lot. No, it's not. No, because there's so many like little links that I see that I've seen in my own life, but also in many other women that I have come across. And that in the beginning, you said you were supposed to do things that you in the 80s, you're supposed to be a professional and you follow that route. and then you're very successful. But then there's a point where you're like, this is great. I've got everything, but I'm not fulfilled. Like, what's next? Right. So this happens to so many women. And it's like, oh, well, I'm exhausted, but I'm not fulfilled. I'm successful from the outside, but I'm not fulfilled. But then you went ahead and you started your own business, which is amazing. So, and then realizing that the big business is maybe not fulfilling your big dreams, but why don't I do something? And now you're doing all these other things like a comedy and writing books. And so I guess the lesson in that for me is that following your passions and not always having to go according to what society tells that we should do.
And the reason why my column is called The Silver Hair Playbook is we are the generation of women that is writing this playbook for the second half of our lives.
Yes.
Women are living to be 100. So 50 is really the halfway mark. It's not the beginning of the end. It's the beginning of the beginning. And the other piece that I didn't really talk about is caretaking. I raised 2 daughters who are now grown and flown and very independent.
Mm-hmm.
But then my mother got ill and she lived to be 95 and I became a primary caregiver. And so she passed away in November of not this last year, but the year before. And I spent time with my brother settling the estate. And then I really have been, I often say factory reboot or reset the clock. Mm-hmm. So for all intents and purposes, my adult life didn't really begin when I graduated college or when I got married or when I got my degree. It really began in July of last year when I no longer had to take care of anybody else. And whether it's employees or independent contractors or aging parents or kids, we as women tend to be the caregivers and the nurturers, and giving ourselves permission to only take care of ourselves is a novel concept.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's why I call my coaching program, It's My Time Now. It is. Yeah. It's our time now because you're right. We're caregivers. We're looking after others, and that's okay. But I mean, there comes a point where you have to ask, what are we doing for ourselves? So I love that. Thanks for putting it all together. And I also wanted to kind of ask you, I know that you mentioned that you were in a corporate role, but you also have this kind of entrepreneurial spirit. And then I think, your first venture was selling multicolored potholders to the door and running a comic book resale business or something. And then your name, Nancy, was named after Nancy Drew and Nancy Sinatra. So tell us about that. And I think you mentioned it's like about your fearlessness, right? And your curiosity. And so that would be where I'm going to ask you this next, is that oftentimes as women, and we're faced in this juncture of life, we're in transition, and it's time now to think about ourselves, but we're fearful, like we get scared, like we're held back by these inner fears that we're discussing. But so how did you manage to be the Nancy Drew and be fearless or whatever and go after what you wanted? And how would you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Fearless was the outside projection, but internally, I was always very fearful. I'd be lying if I said that I confidently rang every doorbell and knocked on every door and had my sales pitch down pat for my potholders. I was terrified when I was doing it. And one of my favorite stories is when I dragged my poor older brother, he's 18 months older than I am, off to school in the middle of a blizzard, accusing him of being a sissy. And I was the one who ended up hugging a tree on the way home and saying, I can't go, very dramatic for a 7-year-old. I can't go on. Go get mom and get help. And he probably dragged me back to the house. But yeah, I also did a lot of really stupid stuff, taking risks that I may not have taken as an adult. But once you start taking risks, it kind of feeds on itself, and it's that adrenaline rush. And remember the first time I skied a black diamond, or the first time you're left home alone with a newborn. There are lots of moments in women's lives where we have no clue what we're doing, and yet we survive and we flourish. And then we look back and we go, oh, that wasn't so bad. That was actually kind of fun. Or, oh man, I never want to do that again. I was just at Hershey Park with both my daughters and my older daughter's 2 kids. And I rode a couple of roller coasters, and I'm like, that was great. And I'm glad I did it, but I'm not doing it again. I'm not going on the one that loops upside down. Like, no way.
Right.
Yeah, but I do challenge myself every day to do something that scares me just a little, because that is how you stay fresh and how you grow and how you don't become a geezer, which is my latest venture, which is a series called Geezer Proof Your Life. I mean, it's the moniker that I use for my dating site already, but it's going to focus on various aspects of our lives as we age and how to stop from becoming that fearful older person. Because if we as women look at everything we've done in our lives from the time we were little kids, we did a lot of scary stuff. Just reminding ourselves of that. The first day of kindergarten, I actually cried so hard my mother had to stay in the classroom for something that maybe I appeared fearless in first grade, but kindergarten, I was a mess. So and also acknowledging your fears and saying, I never really did that before, and it kind of scares me a little bit, but I'm going to try. I'm going to take that calculated risk.
Yeah, exactly. It's about taking the steps, challenging yourself to do something that's a little bit outside of what you're normally doing, used to doing. And then I think that's really important what you said, like you learn from it. If you did it and you don't like it, you know what? We don't have to do it again because we don't have to.
There's something else. There's something else. And learning to be unapologetic. There have been a lot of articles about how women younger and older say sorry a lot. And I'm not sorry anymore for a lot of things. And the expression, sorry, not sorry. Other women have guilted me and say, why don't you live closer to your grandchildren? As if I'm like some horrible being. But actually, my younger daughter said, no, Mom, I think you should stay in Arizona because you like the warm weather and you'll be happier there. So that was very wise of her to counseled me that way. But it was interesting how other women were guilting me. But I love your tagline. It's my time now, because it is. Like,
it's our time to really figure out like what's good for us. What is good for, not that we're not including other people who we love or care about in our lives, but we have to, if we're not happy internally first and fulfilled with whatever we're doing, then what's the point really, right?
Exactly. And we're just cranky and resentful, and you can't be your best self if you're not living your best life.
Yes. Well, great points. That's great. Thank you. I also wanted to ask you, you mentioned, I mentioned in the beginning that you've really been in the forefront of technology, and you still are. And again, it's not typical as women to in your 60s or beyond, or 50s or 60s, to be in the technology world. So tell us about that and why that to you is important. Or
I mean, don't ask me to code like that. I don't know how to do. But to me, coding is the intelligent typing of our era. Yes, coding requires a lot of thinking and a lot of understanding of how to fool the code. But to me, putting a great sentence together or telling a story is every bit as complex as coding and should be treated as such. And I've been told I have a knack for taking really complicated stuff and turning it into plain English, which to me is as important as a skill as coding is. But my father, who died young, he was 64, was one of the pioneers of fetal ultrasound in diagnosing heart defects in unborn children. So I think I probably inherited his tech gene. My older brother is an MD PhD researcher. My younger brother was a computer engineer. So it's probably somewhere in my blood, but I've always loved gadgetry. I loved tinkering. I did a lot of arts and crafts when I was younger, which is not quite the same as technology, but it's figuring stuff out and solving problems. And then when publishing was primarily an analog Luddite industry. But when I started working at Citibank, I worked on the very, very first home banking system and doing the marketing for it and helping people learn how to transition from tellers to ATMs. And I remember getting my first ever personal computer, which was huge. So I realized, now I'm going to use like a 1960s housewife analogy, the same way the vacuum cleaner revolutionized women's jobs in that era. I'm like, wow, having an Alexa is making my life so much easier. Or having an Echo, where I could just say, Alexa, put such and such on my grocery list. Or scanning stuff and having it in my phone. So I'm all about humanistic technology and technology that makes human life better. And one of my big marketing clients right now is a company called Radius AI. And their mission is to help retailers primarily right now keep their employees safe and keep customers safe using technology. So if you start to look at what's the purpose of the technology, it's not just for fun and games and turning yourself into an avatar or dancing on TikTok. Some of these technologies are going to be invaluable as we age. And age tech is now a $2 trillion, expected to be a $2 trillion industry, because we're all going to need help of some kind when we have mobility issues or eyesight issues or hearing issues. So I'm like 150% invested in technology that makes us smarter, makes our lives easier, connects us with other people. You and I would not have met if not for technology.
Right. Wow. Okay. That's age tech. I didn't realize that was such a
thing.
Yeah. I love that because one of what you mentioned about the vacuum cleaner and the stage, all that we've seen in our lives, if I actually kind of think about it, like we were talking about this the other day, my husband and I, and we're like, because we've been married, like we just celebrated our 29th anniversary, and we're like,
happy anniversary.
Do you remember? Thank you. But do you remember the first, like, how did we communicate? Like when we had a big thing going on, like when he got his first job, and how did we actually communicate? He goes, I remember going on the payphone and calling you from such and such location. And I'm like, can you imagine? So the thing is, like, we've actually lived through it, and we need to recognize that we've actually have learned through that.
Oh yeah, so, my daughters asked me the other day, like, they go, what were the whole cloth diaper thing? Like, what was that?
Yeah.
And they have a friend who's very into sustainability who's using cloth diapers now, which is also funny when you see things that
full circle.
They've gone full circle. But that you're 100% right that our generation in many ways is the most qualified to lead the next technology evolution because we have seen it from the very beginning.
Yes. And I love that humanistic technology because it is so important.
Which is why the industry needs so many more women in the industry to be that voice to say, this is really cool, but who is it helping? How is it helping?
Yeah. And you talk a lot about this cross-generational like collaboration, and does that also relate to that? Because we know it's not only like us learning maybe technology from the younger coders, but it's also about the younger coders learning from us about what we have seen in our lives. I don't know. Maybe you can talk a little bit about this concept of cross-generational collaboration.
Yeah, and it's really, really, really important. And I know more people are starting to get involved in that movement, for lack of a better term. Like Charlotte Japp started a group called Circle. I don't know how many years ago, but that was her mission, was to facilitate more intergenerational, cross-generational collaboration. And I was just telling the story this morning that a woman had said to a mutual acquaintance of ours, you should get to know Nancy because we work in the same industry. And this woman who's 40 said, oh, I don't want to hang out with an old lady. And I was like, wow, like this is a younger person.
Are you serious? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So there is just rampant ageism. I was at a Halloween party last year where 4 20-somethings were dressed as old people with walkers and canes. And I said to them, how old do you think I am? And they looked very uncomfortable. And I said, come on, like, guess. And they were even more uncomfortable. And I said, I am an old person and I don't have a walker and I don't have a cane and I don't have gray hair. So this is ageism. Like I said, you wouldn't wear blackface to a party or pretend to be an Asian person with a Chinese food takeout container. Why is this okay? And just, I don't mean to digress, but that's a good example of how you had this group of 4 young people who were that clueless about how what they were doing might be offensive.
Yes.
And they were like, oh, it's funny. And the media is perpetuating that. One of my least favorite commercials is the one about turning into your parents. And the parents are doing like annoying things. And
Freedom 55 or whatever it is.
Yeah. And so it's almost like it's fair game.
Yeah.
And older people do it. We do it to ourselves sometimes. When you see comics standing up, complaining about menopause, or my greatest feat today was getting out of bed. Like, what does that tell younger people about our generation?
Right.
So I do collaborate a lot with the right younger people, not this woman who thinks I'm just some old lady, but that's her loss and her discomfort. But I've gained so much working with people a third my age, even kids who are still in college, and their perspectives, their skills, their habits. I just learn so much from people at all ages, and it really needs to go in both directions.
Yes, 100%. And is that one of the reasons that you have this column, this Route 66? And it seems to now it's all kind of coming together, the Route 66, the comedy where you're talking about.
Hi, my friend. Kavita here. Do you often feel blocked from moving forward? We all feel that way at times. These are referred to as energy blocks. I've created a short, actionable PDF guide to help you release your negative energy blocks. Click the link in the description to download it now for free. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, I mean, I really serve as a role model, hopefully. I mean, that's the vision, is to serve as a role model for other women who are younger, not to fear aging, because I have a pretty great life right now, and women my age and older who feel like they may already be washed up and shriveled up and done because they don't have to be if they don't choose to be.
Yes. And so what are some of the topics you bring up in your Route 66?
Well, this month, my theme is body positivity and viewing people as we age more like classic cars rather than old
clunkers,
beat up jalopies. It's all how you choose to take care of your body and your mind. I start every day at 4:30, 5 o'clock. I have my coffee. I do Wordle on my phone. I go to the gym. I am very, very mindful about my fuel, what I put into my body. I don't eat sugar. I don't eat wheat. I don't eat most dairy. I'm really preserving myself so that I could be my best self up to 100 and beyond. I think we need to, and I think it's starting to happen. I've seen more celebrities saying that they regret having plastic surgery, that models over 50 are coming forward and embracing their scars and their wrinkles.
Yes.
And I think we need to this is going to sound very sappy, but we need to love ourselves first before anybody else can love us.
Absolutely. And I love what you're saying. I mean, congratulations. I mean, for you to be able to get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, it's about our decisions about who do we want to be, right? That's the word be. It's not, and I think it changes from who do we want to be? Like before it was like, oh, what do we want to do? We have to do this and that. But I think the question about who do we want to be, and then it'll flows from there. But that can be at any age. It doesn't have to
and some of
stop.
the answers, as I said, lie in our childhood fantasies. Who did you want to be when you were a little girl or a little boy? And then just really peeling the onion. I always loved Lois Lane when I watched the old black and white Superman, and I loved Nancy Drew and my other namesake, Nancy Sinatra. These boots are made for walking. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, I can still be that amalgam of those. Yeah. Well, I just have to.
I love it. I love that. That's great. Okay, so what does the A stand for in your name?
The mystery of all time. I actually removed the period after the A because the fun fact is it doesn't stand for anything. My mother, who was one of the original feminists and a badass in her own right, decided when I was born that I should have freedom of choice. And so she put an A on my birth certificate with the thought that when I got older, I would choose my own middle name.
That's fabulous. Oh, wow. I've never heard
creative,
that. Yes.
So ahead of her time.
Wow. And that just gave me the chills. Honestly, it did. It was
yeah,
that's amazing. That's A for amazing.
I'm listening to maybe some cryptic symbol. And harder to explain. But I sort of grew into the A, and there was a stage when I like my hippie era where I thought I would be like Amantha, like Samantha without the S. And my mother always kind of liked the name Anne. But as I got older, it's like A is the first letter of the alphabet. Somebody jokingly said it's like Nancy A Shenker, which is kind of comical. And so I just left it there. And there actually is another Nancy Shenker who's a yoga instructor in New York, and people were always getting us mixed up at doctors' offices and in a place where we had our information. So it also differentiates me from the other Nancy Shenker. And I kept my maiden name. I was the first Shenker in my family to not only go to graduate college, but go on to grad school. Mm-hmm. So the Shenker and the A are just part of who I am.
That's a great story. That's really great. And what a visionary your mom was.
Yeah. Right. And I was glad I got to moved to Arizona 5 years ago so I could spend the last few years of her life with her. And I'm so glad I did. And I got her a tablet when she was 94. She hated the thought of technology and speaking about that not being too late. At 94, I taught my mother how to use an iPad.
Oh my goodness. Good for you. I was going to say, would you want to say anything else or enough with anything? But I mean, that sounds.
No, I will end with
perfect.
that because Cynthia Shenker, who's off somewhere, wherever we go after our bodies leave the earth, if she were still alive, she would be watching this on her tablet.
On her tablet.
She was proud of me.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. This has been really great conversation. I really enjoyed it. And
thank you.
I wanted to ask you what's next for you, where people can find you and how they can get in touch with you. We'll have everything on our show notes, but please let us know what's the next big thing for you.
The most comprehensive place to find me is actually on my Instagram, which is the On Switch, TheOnSwitch.
Okay.
I'm on all social media. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm not on TikTok, but I have a TikTok account. I just don't use it. But my Instagram, at the top of it is something called Linktree, which also I believe is on my LinkedIn profile. And that is like a table of contents for all of my writing, my blogs, my sites. So that's really the best place. If you go to either LinkedIn or Instagram and you find my Linktree, it'll have all of my sublinks. What's next? I haven't been able to travel as much as I would like. A combination of the pandemic and my mother's illness sort of kept me close to home, but I can work from anywhere, have laptop, will travel. I'm off to Las Vegas next week for a tech company partner meeting and then the fancy food show, as I mentioned to you. Yes. And so combining work and play is way up there in my priority list.
That's beautiful. And I just love your energy.
Thank you.
I mean, it just comes through. And like I love the way you said that work and play. My business name is Power, Purpose, Play. Play is so important in our lives, and you just take advantage of who you want to be and what you want to do, and just enjoy it while you can, because we have the second half of our life to play and be who we want to be, right? So
and you want to play while you still have all your faculties and can enjoy the world around you. So seize the day.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you again for being wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and it was great to learn about your story and for sharing it. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.
I trust you enjoyed this episode of the podcast with Nancy A Shenker, and she made you realize that you can indeed write your own playbook exactly the way you want it to be. Here are her key takeaways. Number 1, what is your innate superpower, which you may have had since childhood? If we believe that we are washed up, then we will start to behave that way. As women, we need to take back some of our power. Number 2, we are the generation of women that is writing this playbook for the second half of our lives. It's not the beginning of the end. It's the beginning of the beginning. Number 3, challenge yourself every day to do something that scares you, just a little, because that is how you stay fresh and how you grow and how you don't become a geezer or that fearful older woman. 4, if we as women look at everything we've done in our lives from when we were kids, we did a lot of scary stuff, and remind yourself of that every day. Number 5, our generation in many ways is the most qualified to lead the next technology evolution because we have seen it from the very beginning. Number 6, cross-generational collaboration is so important. You can gain so much by working with people of all ages, their perspectives, skills, and habits. And number 7, we need to love ourselves first before anyone else can love us. Thanks so much for listening. And if you enjoy this podcast, please do rate, review, and share. Remember, my friend, it's your time now to recognize, acknowledge, and tame your gremlins. You can write your own playbook moving forward in life. You've got this. Till next time, stay well and stay safe.